You're not his type, Lauren. He would never look at you. Blair's voice cut through the quiet buzz of the office like a slap. The words landed right between Lauren's ribs and stayed there, heavy and sharp. They stood near the glass wall that overlooked Manhattan, on the 48th floor. The morning sun hit the skyscrapers outside and poured into the office, bouncing off polished marble floors and sleek black furniture. Phones rang in distant corners. Keyboards clicked in fast rhythm. People in expensive suits moved like they had somewhere important to be. Lauren swallowed and pretended to check something on her tablet, just so she didn't have to look at Blair. You didn't have to say it like that, Lauren murmured. Blair leaned her hip against the edge of the reception desk, the red dress hugging her figure like it had been made for her. Her dark hair fell in perfect waves over her shoulders. She looked like she belonged in that office, like she belonged anywhere she decided to stand. I'm just being honest, Blair replied, lowering her voice, but not enough. Look around, Lauren. Do you see the kind of women that orbit a man like him? Lauren didn't have to look. She saw them every day, tall, confident, perfect hair, perfect nails, perfect clothes. Women who walked in like they owned the city, even when everyone in the room knew that the real power was sitting behind a certain black glass door at the end of the corridor. Marco Conti, her boss, her Mafia boss. Lauren adjusted the small gold name tag pinned to her light beige blouse and kept her eyes on the tablet screen, even though she wasn't seeing anything. Blair smirked. You're sweet, you're efficient, you're nice. She said the word like it was almost a problem. But he doesn't go for nice, he goes for challenge, fire, mystery. You're not his type of woman, and that's okay. You just need to accept it. The elevator chimed. Both women turned their heads at the same time, like the sound was a string pulling them. The doors slid open. Marco Conti stepped out. For a second, the office seemed to tighten around his presence. His dark suit fit him perfectly, the black fabric cutting a sharp line over his broad shoulders. The white shirt under the jacket was open at the collar, just enough to make him look more dangerous than formal. His hair was dark, slightly tousled in a way that looked effortless and intentional at the same time. He walked with calm confidence, like nothing and no one could rush him. Two men in suits followed a few steps behind him, their eyes scanning the floor out of habit, reading every corner of the space. His security, always close, never obvious. Lauren's heart did that familiar, stupid jump. Don't look at him. Don't stare. Don't. He passed by the reception area, and the light from the windows fell over his profile. Strong jaw, dark eyes, the hint of a shadow along his cheeks from a close shave that was already growing back. He tapped his phone screen with his thumb, glanced at a notification, then slipped it back into his jacket pocket. Good morning, Mr. Conti, Blair said, her voice sweetening instantly. Good morning, he replied without slowing down. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at either of them. He just kept walking toward his office, long strides eating up the polished floor. Blair didn't seem bothered. She watched him walk away with open appreciation, eyes traveling down his back and lower. Then she leaned closer to Lauren and whispered, See? Not his type. Lauren swallowed again. Her cheeks burned with a mix of embarrassment and something that tasted like shame. She hated that she cared. She hated that she noticed how his sleeves were rolled just enough to show his watch when he reached for a file. She hated that she knew the pattern of his schedule, the way his mood changed depending on who came through that door. She hated that Blair was probably right. I don't want to talk about this, Lauren said, voice low but firm. We're at work. Blair shrugged, picking up a stack of folders from her desk. Her glossy red nails tapped against the cardboard. We are at work, and I'm telling you this so you don't embarrass yourself. Men like him don't end up with girls who stand in the background and pray not to be noticed. She gave Lauren a quick, almost sympathetic look. You're better off focusing on your job. She walked away then, hips swaying, heading toward the conference room where some of the associates were already gathering. Her heels clicked sharply on the floor. Lauren took a breath and forced her shoulders to relax. She checked the time on her computer screen. 9:03 a.m., another day. Another morning where she would see him from a distance, hear his voice giving instructions, watch him move through meetings and calls and deals. Another day where her heart would respond like it belonged to him, when in reality he didn't even know who she really was. "You're not his type." The words repeated in her mind, quiet and cruel. She pushed them away and focused on what she could control. Emails, calls, schedules. Lauren was good at her work. That was something nobody could take from her. She organized the calendar, filtered messages, confirmed appointments, sent reminders, redirected calls. She kept the floor running smoothly like a quiet engine. The rest of the morning went by in a blur of tasks. Blair passed by Marco's glass office several times, always with a file in hand, always with a reason to knock. Lauren heard her laugh from across the floor, saw the way Blair tilted her head, the way she leaned just a little closer when he spoke to her. At 11:17 a.m., a meeting ran late. At 11:26, one of the clients arrived earlier than scheduled. At 11:30, the client was already annoyed. Lauren saw it coming before anyone else did. A tall man in an expensive gray suit paced near the waiting area, his jaw tight, tie slightly loosened. He kept checking his watch, then the glass door where Marco was still in a different meeting. "Sir, Mr. Conti is finishing up an important call," Lauren said, standing from her desk and walking over to him with a polite smile. "He hasn't forgotten you. He asked us to make sure you were comfortable. Can I get you a coffee? Water? Something while you wait? What you can get me is the man I came here to see," the client snapped. His voice was loud enough to make a few heads turn. "I don't have time to sit around like this. Does he think my schedule is flexible just because his isn't?" Lauren didn't flinch. She had dealt with difficult people before, but not all of them were connected to Marco's world. "I understand," she replied calmly. "I'll let him know you're here and that your time is limited. He usually doesn't keep anyone waiting without a good reason." She kept her tone respectful but steady. "If you give me 2 minutes, I'll get you an update." The man huffed, but he stopped pacing. Lauren walked quickly back to her desk and pressed the intercom button that connected directly to Marco's office. "Mr. Conti?" she said when the line clicked. "Mr. Hale is here for the 11:30. He arrived a little early and is getting anxious." There was a short silence. She could hear faint voices in the background, probably from the other call he was on. "I'll be out in 3 minutes, Marco said. His voice was low, steady, controlled. "Tell him I appreciate his patience, and get him whatever he wants to drink." "Of course." She hung up and turned back to the client. "Mr. Conti will be with you in 3 minutes, she said. "He asked me to thank you for your patience. Can I get you a coffee while you wait?" The client's shoulders lost a little of their tension. The mention that Marco had personally said something seemed to calm him. "Double espresso," he muttered. "No sugar. Right away." Lauren headed toward the small kitchen area to prepare the coffee. Her hands moved quickly and confidently. She knew where everything was, how he liked his coffee, how the associates liked theirs. She sank into the rhythm of the familiar task, the heat of the machine, the sound of liquid hitting the cup. When she came back, Marco was already out of his office, standing near the hallway. He had ended his previous call and stepped out exactly when he said he would. "Mr. Hale," Marco called, his voice smooth. The client turned. "There he is," Marco said, extending a hand with a small, almost lazy smile that somehow still managed to look authoritative. "I appreciate you coming up." The client's annoyance seemed to vanish like smoke. He shook Marco's hand firmly, his tone changing before Lauren's eyes. "Mr. Conti, of course. Thank you for seeing me." Lauren stopped a few steps away, waiting for an opening to hand over the coffee. She didn't want to cut in. Her job was to support, not to interfere. Marco glanced in her direction. For a second, his eyes met hers. It wasn't a long look. It wasn't dramatic, but it was direct. She felt it anyway, like a rush under her skin. Lauren stepped forward and held the cup politely. "Double espresso, no sugar," she said. "Just how you like it, Mr. Hale." The client blinked, surprised. He took the cup from her. "You remembered," he muttered. "Of course," Lauren replied softly. "We appreciate your time." Marco watched the exchange. His gaze went from the client to the cup to Lauren again. There was a faint shift in his expression, something small, something that most people probably wouldn't even notice. A flicker of curiosity. "Lauren keeps this floor from falling apart," he said casually, but there was a weight in the words. "If you need anything while you're here, talk to her. She'll take care of it." The compliment landed on her like sudden warmth. Her chest tightened. "Thank you, sir," she said, trying to sound professional and not like her heart had just pressed against her ribs for attention. Marco nodded once and gestured toward the conference room. "Shall we?" he said to Mr. Hale. The two men walked away, security trailing behind, the conversation shifting back into business territory. Lauren stood still for half a second, processing what just happened. He knows my name. He knows what I do. Of course he does, she scolded herself. You've been working here for months. That doesn't mean anything. But it did feel like something. She went back to her desk, pretending her pulse wasn't racing. A few minutes later, Blair reappeared, returning from another department. What was that? Blair asked, dropping a folder on her own desk and sliding her gaze toward Lauren. I saw him talking about you. What did he say? Nothing, Lauren replied quickly. Just a work thing. Blair narrowed her eyes, curious and annoyed at the same time. Work thing how? He said I keep the floor from falling apart. Lauren tried to laugh it off, like it wasn't a big deal. He was just being polite. Blair's lips pressed together. Of course, she said, but her tone was tight. He appreciates efficiency, that's all. Lauren nodded and turned back to her computer, but she could feel Blair watching her, measuring, calculating. When lunchtime came around, a handful of employees headed to the cafeteria on the lower floor. Some ordered delivery. Some stayed at their desks with salads and takeout boxes. The office never went completely quiet. Lauren ate a simple sandwich at her desk, eyes on her screen, reviewing the afternoon schedule. As she chewed, she saw an alert pop up on her calendar. Meeting rescheduled. 2:15 p.m. Cancelled. New call added at 3 p.m. with P. Romano. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a second. Romano. She had heard that name before. It floated around conversations that stopped when she walked into a room. Some of the security guys lowered their voices when they mentioned it. She wasn't stupid. She knew what kind of world Marco came from. She had never seen anything violent happen inside that office, but the undercurrent was always there. The careful words, the way certain visitors looked like they were used to being feared. But there was something about the way Marco carried himself that made her feel safe in a strange way. As if he could be dangerous with everyone else, but never with her. Stop thinking like that, she told herself. He's your boss, that's all. At 2:03 p.m., Blair appeared again at her desk, holding a mirror compact to fix her lipstick. I'm going to drop off these contracts, Blair said, clicking the mirror shut. If he asks, I'm just making sure he signs them today. You don't need to tell me, Lauren said, looking at the paperwork on her own screen. I don't control where you go. You control half the building's life, Blair replied. Don't pretend you don't know that. She walked toward Marco's office with a slow, deliberate step. Her hand smoothed down the front of her dress. She knocked. Come in. Marco's voice floated out. She slipped inside and closed the door behind her. Lauren forced herself not to look. She tried to focus on an email draft. She clicked through a few more tasks, but her attention kept drifting back to the closed office door. She could imagine Blair's tone, the way she would stand a little too close, the way she would casually flip her hair over her shoulder and laugh. It's none of your business, she reminded herself. He can date whoever he wants. He can marry whoever he wants. It will never be you. You're not his type. The words sank deeper. 10 minutes passed, then 12. The office door finally opened. Blair stepped out, holding fewer folders than she took in. How was it? Lauren asked before she could stop herself. Blair's mouth curled into a slow smile. He's very intense when he talks about contracts, she said, dragging out the word in a way that made it sound like something else. We went over a lot of details. He likes focused women. Lauren's stomach twisted. I'm sure he does, she replied, keeping her voice neutral. Blair leaned closer, her perfume filling Lauren's space. Seriously, Lauren, I say this as your friend. Don't get ideas, okay? Her tone was soft, but the message was sharp. He's not for you. He belongs to a different world. You'll only get hurt. She tapped a finger lightly on Lauren's desk and walked away, humming a tune under her breath. The rest of the afternoon dragged. Calls, messages, notes, updates, the usual. But Lauren moved through it all like she was underwater. She tried to focus on the parts of her life that were simple and safe. Her small apartment, her plant that was somehow still alive in her kitchen window, the book waiting on her nightstand, the podcast she listened to during the commute, normal things, things that didn't involve a man whose last name carried weight in the city. At 5:42 p.m., right when she thought the day might finally calm down, one of the internal lines rang. She checked the screen. Marco Conti, office. Her pulse skipped. She pressed the button to answer. Yes, Mr. Conti? Lauren, he said, her name sounding different in his voice. Do you have a minute? Yes, of course. Good. I need to go over a few details for tomorrow morning's meetings. Come into my office, please. Her fingers tightened around the receiver for a fraction of a second. Right away, she said. He hung up. Lauren took a breath, stood up and smoothed down her blouse with her palms. She checked quickly if there was anything on her face, any smudge of mascara, any trace of lunch. Her reflection in the black screen of her monitor showed her brown hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, bangs framing her face. Her eyes looked a little tired, but clear. Stop overthinking. He just wants to talk about work. She took a folder with the printed schedule for the next day, grabbed a notepad and a pen out of habit, and walked toward his office. She could feel Blair's eyes following her from across the floor. The hallway to his door felt longer than usual. The glass walls reflected the city lights that were starting to blink on as the sun began to go down. The handle of his office door was cool under her fingers. She knocked softly. Come in, his voice said from inside. Lauren opened the door and stepped into his office. Marco sat behind his large black desk. The city spread out in lights behind him through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His jacket was off now, draped over the back of his chair. The sleeves of his shirt were rolled up to his forearms. Papers were neatly arranged on the desk, along with his phone, a glass of water, and a few open folders. He looked up as she entered. His eyes met hers and didn't slide away this time. Close the door, please, he said. Her hand hesitated for a second on the knob. Then she did as he asked, the soft click of the door sealing them off from the noise of the office. She turned back to him, heart pounding, not knowing that this was the moment everything would slowly start to change. Lauren stood in front of the closed door for a heartbeat longer than necessary, fingers still resting on the cool metal. Inside, Marco Conti waited, calm, composed, focused, yet something in the way he had said her name lingered in her chest. She finally took a breath and walked toward his desk. I brought tomorrow's schedule, she said softly, placing the folder on the edge of the desk. Marco leaned back in his chair, eyes steady on her face. Not rushed, not distracted, focused. Sit, he said, nodding toward the chair across from him. She sat carefully, smoothing the hem of her blouse, trying to keep her composure even as her pulse fluttered like wings inside her. Marco opened the folder, scanned the top page, then looked back at her. You rearranged these meetings yourself? He asked. Yes, sir. There were time conflicts and Mr. Romano needed a longer slot than originally planned. I moved the internal briefing so you'd have room. He tapped the schedule once with his finger. Smart, he said. Very smart. Her breath caught. He wasn't complimenting her because he had to. He wasn't being polite. His voice had a weight to it, a sincerity she wasn't used to hearing from him. Thank you, she whispered. Marco closed the folder and folded his hands on top of it. His forearms flexed slightly as he moved, the veins along his skin visible under the rolled sleeves. Lauren tried desperately not to look at them. Tell me something, he said suddenly. Her eyes lifted. Yes? How long have you been here? 7 months, she answered. And in 7 months, he continued, you've never once asked me for anything. A raise, a change, a recommendation, a break, nothing. She blinked. I didn't think it was appropriate, she said quietly. You're my boss. His gaze softened, just a little. And yet you still manage to do more for this department than people who have been here for 5 years. Her cheeks warmed. She looked down at her notepad, fingers tightening around the pen. I'm just doing my job, she murmured. No, he said, you're doing it well. The words wrapped around her like a warm blanket, unexpected and gentle. She felt her throat tighten, but she kept her posture straight. Marco leaned forward slightly. There's something else, he said. This morning, with Mr. Hale. Her heart skipped. You handled him exceptionally well, Marco said. Most people freeze up or escalate when someone gets impatient. You didn't. Lauren nodded once. I just didn't want the situation to get worse. You calmed him down, Marco said. Not many people can do that. He paused. His eyes studied her in a way that made her feel seen, truly seen, for the first time. It was too much. Lauren dropped her gaze again, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm glad I could help. Marco exhaled softly, leaning back into his chair again. You helped more than you know. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged, heavy, a space neither of them dared fill with the wrong words. Finally, Marco picked up the folder again. Tomorrow will be a long day, he said. I want you in the briefing room with me. Lauren's head shot up. Me? Yes, he said. You. His eyes didn't waver. I trust your judgment. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Blair had been trying for months to get into that room. Associates fought for that spot, and he had chosen her. I'll be there. Good. He stood, signaling the meeting was ending. That's all for now. Lauren rose from her chair quickly, clutching her notepad to her chest. She reached for the door, hand trembling just slightly. Lauren? She turned. Marco stood near his desk, hands in his pockets, his dark eyes fixed on her. Don't let anyone tell you what type of woman you are. Her breath froze. He didn't mention Blair. He didn't have to. He had heard something. He had noticed something. Or maybe he had been paying attention to her far more than she realized. Lauren opened her mouth, but no words came out. Marco looked away first, as if giving her permission to breathe again. Have a good night, he said simply. She nodded, slipped out of the office, and closed the door behind her. Her heartbeat tapping against her ribs like it was trying to escape. The hallway felt brighter, or maybe she was the one glowing. But before she could even take 5 steps. Why were you in there? Blair's voice shot across the room. Lauren froze. Blair walked toward her with a slow, calculated smile. Did he need something urgently, or did you ask to talk to him? No, Lauren said quickly. He called me. He called you, Blair repeated, eyes narrowing slightly. About what? Work, Lauren said. Just work. Blair studied her for a long moment, suspicion growing behind her perfect makeup. You know, she said casually, men like Marco only pay attention to women who can offer something special. Lauren's heartbeat faltered. Blair tilted her head, voice dripping honey and venom at once. And I don't think you're his type, sweetheart. I mean, really, be honest with yourself. Before Lauren could respond, the door to Marco's office opened again. Both women turned. He stepped out, jacket in hand, ready to leave for the evening. His gaze passed briefly over Blair. Then it landed on Lauren. Not rushed, not accidental. A deliberate look, direct, warm. A flicker of something softer than curiosity. Interest. His voice was low when he spoke. Good night, Lauren? Blair's jaw almost dropped. Lauren barely managed to whisper back, Good night, sir. Marco walked to the elevator and one of his guards hit the button for him. As the doors opened, he looked over his shoulder one last time. At her. Lauren's chest tightened. He stepped inside. The doors slid shut. And Blair's stunned hiss cut the silence. What was that? Lauren held her notepad tighter and whispered the truth she barely dared to believe. I don't know. But she did. Something had shifted, and no matter how much Blair wanted to believe it wasn't happening, Marco Conti had just looked at her in a way he had never looked at any other woman on that floor. And for the first time, Lauren felt that maybe, just maybe, she was his type. Lauren barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the same thing. Marco Conti looking at her from inside the elevator, that quiet, intentional glance that didn't feel like an accident or a mistake. It felt like a beginning. And that terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. By the time morning came, she was dressed earlier than usual, double-checked her blouse, fixed her bangs 3 times, and took the subway to Manhattan, with her heart beating a nervous rhythm under her coat. When the elevator doors opened onto the 48th floor, the office was already awake. Phones ringing, printers humming, the skyline glowing with early sun. But there was something else in the air today. A tension she could feel in her bones. She walked to her desk and logged in, trying to look normal, like her heart hadn't been doing somersaults since dawn. But she didn't get more than 30 seconds of peace before Blair's heels clicked down the hallway. "There she is," Blair said, plastering on a bright smile as she stopped next to Lauren's desk. "The chosen one." Lauren kept her voice calm. "Good morning, Blair." "Good morning," Blair repeated, leaning her elbows on the edge of the desk so she could get closer. "You look unusually ready for the day." "I'm always ready for the day." "Mm-hmm." Blair crossed her arms. "Well, just in case you're confused, I'm going to the briefing today. Marco always wants 2 secretaries to prep the room." That wasn't true. Marco had never once asked for 2 secretaries in that room. Ever. And last night he had been very clear. "I want you in the briefing room with me." Only her. Before she could respond, the elevator chimed. Lauren didn't even need to turn to know who had arrived. Marco Conti always changed the entire atmosphere of the floor the moment he stepped out. But today, it felt different. He walked toward them with his usual confidence, suit impossibly crisp, shirt open at the collar, dark eyes focused straight ahead. His security team followed close behind. Blair straightened up instantly, adjusting her red blouse, lips parting in anticipation. "Good morning, Mr. Conti," she said sweetly, the same tone she always used. Marco didn't slow down. "Morning," he replied, short, distracted, polite. Then he passed Blair without a second glance and stopped directly in front of Lauren. Her pulse jumped. "Lauren," he said, voice low and calm, "I need you in the briefing room 10 minutes before we start." She nodded. "Yes, sir, I'll be there." He held her gaze for a second longer than necessary. "Good." Then he walked away. Blair's face fell. Completely. She blinked twice, stunned, then turned back to Lauren with an expression she tried and failed to hide behind a smile. "I don't know why he wants you in there," she murmured, voice sugary but acidic underneath. "But don't get your hopes up. He probably needs you to type something." Lauren didn't answer. Because the truth was, she didn't know why he wanted her in that room either. But her hopes, they were already up. At 9:50 a.m., Lauren walked into the briefing room holding a notebook and the printed schedule. Marco was already there, sleeves rolled up, reviewing documents at the center of the table. He looked up the moment she entered, and everything inside her tightened. "Close the door," he said softly. She did. When she turned back, Marco had stepped closer, but not too close, just enough to feel his presence, enough to feel the warmth of his attention. "You nervous?" he asked. She froze. "Should I be?" A small, subtle smile touched his jaw. "Not with me." Those 3 words almost buckled her knees. Marco gestured for her to come to his side. "I need to go over something with you before everyone arrives." She moved closer, heart racing, and he handed her a sheet of paper, a list of names, times, notes in his handwriting. "I want you sitting next to me today," Marco said. "If anything changes during the meeting, I'll signal you, and you update the schedule quietly." She blinked. "Sitting next to you?" "Yes." His tone was steady. "Right next to me?" Her chest tightened, She nodded quickly. Before she could step back, he spoke again, quieter this time. And Lauren, don't listen to people who try to make you feel small. Her breath caught. He wasn't guessing. He knew. Whatever was said to you yesterday, he continued, don't carry it with you. She swallowed hard. I won't, she whispered. Marco's eyes held hers for a long, still moment. Then voices echoed in the hallway, and he stepped back. Take your seat, he said. She sat to his right, hands clasped together in her lap. A moment later, the room filled with executives, advisors, lawyers, men in suits with sharp eyes and women with confident strides. Blair slipped inside too, pretending she belonged there, taking a seat farther down the table. Marco entered last, closing the door behind him. When he sat, he didn't look at Blair. He didn't scan the room. He didn't review the files. He looked at Lauren. For half a second, enough to make her breath stop, enough for Blair to notice, enough for 4 people at the table to subtly raise eyebrows. Marco turned back to the meeting as if nothing had happened, but something had happened. Lauren felt it under her skin. The meeting began, intense and fast. Documents passed hand to hand. People asked questions sharply. Deadlines were decided, deals negotiated, alliances confirmed. And every time someone addressed Lauren, Marco's head would turn subtly toward them, like he was making sure they spoke to her respectfully. When she reached for a pen, he slid one toward her before she could grab it. When she lifted her notebook, he adjusted his chair slightly to give her more space. When someone asked her for a file too abruptly, Marco cut in smoothly. Ask her politely. She's doing us a favor supporting this meeting. The room froze for a second. Lauren tried not to tremble. Nobody spoke to her sharply again. Halfway through the briefing, one of the advisors, a tall man with silver hair, walked in late. He dropped a folder on the table and leaned toward Marco. Traffic, he said. Sorry, I'm behind. Marco didn't say anything at first. He simply shifted his gaze toward Lauren, just a fraction, like he expected her to know what he needed. And she did. Without speaking, she slid the updated briefing notes toward him. Marco didn't look surprised. He didn't check the paper. He didn't question her. He picked it up immediately and handed it to the advisor. Next time, Marco said, show up prepared like she is. Silence. A stunned silence. Lauren's cheeks went hot. Blair stared at her like she had just watched the world tilt off its axis. Lauren kept her eyes on her notebook, trying not to smile, trying not to breathe too loudly, trying not to explode with the fact that Marco wasn't treating her like someone invisible. He was treating her like someone important. Someone he trusted, someone he noticed, someone he chose to have by his side. When the meeting ended, everyone stood to leave. Papers shuffled, chairs scraped, people murmured about their next calls. Blair made her move instantly. She stepped right toward Marco, brushing her hair back, smiling like she owned the floor. Marco, do you need me to stay after to help with the— No, he said without looking at her. You're dismissed. Blair froze. Dismissed? She didn't move. She didn't breathe. Lauren tried to slip out quietly. She didn't want to be in the middle of that humiliation, but as she reached the door, Marco spoke. Lauren. She turned slowly. Marco stood on the opposite side of the table, sleeves rolled up, tie slightly loose, the Manhattan skyline burning gold behind him. Stay, he said. I need you. Blair's expression shattered. Lauren felt the room spin around her. I'll wait outside, Blair muttered, voice stiff, fleeing the room before anyone could see the crack in her confidence. The door clicked shut. Lauren stood alone with him now, heart pounding. Marco walked toward her with slow, controlled steps. Thank you, he said quietly. You were exceptional today. I just did my job. No. He shook his head. You did more. Her breath trembled. Marco's eyes held hers in a way that made her forget the walls, the city, the world outside that room. Then, he stepped just a little closer, close enough that she felt his warmth, close enough that her heart might break through her ribs, close enough that for a moment she forgot she wasn't supposed to want this. Lauren. His voice was low, dangerous, soft. You said you weren't nervous around me. That's not what I... Good, he interrupted gently, because I'm not planning to give you any reason to be. She swallowed hard, every nerve awake. He stepped back finally, giving her space to breathe. Be ready at lunchtime, Marco said. I have something I want to discuss with you privately. Privately. The word shot straight through her. Yes, sir, she whispered. He nodded once. Good, you can go. Lauren walked out of the room, legs shaky, breath unsteady, and Blair was waiting for her in the hallway. Her arms were crossed, her eyes were sharp, her voice was poison dipped in honey. What? Blair hissed. Did he want with you alone? Lauren clutched her notebook to her chest, heart still racing. She didn't know exactly what Marco wanted. But she knew one thing. Blair wouldn't like the answer. Lauren spent the rest of the morning trying and failing to calm the storm inside her. Every few minutes, her mind replayed the same moments. Marco saying, I need you. Marco choosing her over Blair. Marco looking at her like she wasn't invisible, like she mattered. By the time noon approached, her stomach fluttered so much she could barely eat. She forced herself to take a few sips of water, fixed her bangs again, and tried to look normal. She didn't succeed. Relax, whispered Maya, one of the assistants who worked nearby. You're acting like you're about to meet a celebrity. Lauren almost choked on air. What? I'm fine. Completely fine. Maya smiled knowingly. Right, and I'm the Queen of England. Before Lauren could respond, she heard it. His voice. Lauren. Her breath caught. She turned, and there he was. Marco stood a few steps away, sleeves rolled neatly, jacket off, tie loosened just a small amount. His hair was slightly messy from the long morning, and somehow that made him even more devastating. Ready? He asked. She nodded. Yes, sir. Her voice was too soft, too breathy, too obvious. He didn't seem bothered. Come with me. As they walked through the office, people noticed. They always noticed him. Today, they noticed her too. Lauren kept her head down out of habit, but when she passed Blair's desk, she felt the heat of Blair's glare like a spotlight on her skin. Blair stood up immediately, red blouse bright as warning lights. Marco, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I didn't know you were heading to lunch. I was just about to... I'm not going far, he cut in calmly. Blair's smile faltered, but she kept it pinned in place. Well, if you need me for anything, I don't, he said simply. Blair blinked like she'd just been slapped. Marco didn't even slow down. Lauren followed him in stunned silence. When they reached the private elevator, the one used only by executives and security, Marco stepped aside slightly, letting her enter first. Her heart jumped. Nobody from her position used that elevator. Nobody. Marco stepped in behind her, pressed a button, and the doors closed, sealing them in their own quiet world. Lauren clasped her hands together. You don't have to take me somewhere fancy. We can just stay on the floor and... He shook his head once. No. No explanation, no hesitation. Just a simple, unshakable no. The elevator descended smoothly. He watched her in silence, his gaze steady, unreadable. Lauren felt heat rise to her cheeks. Are we going far? Not far, he said softly. Just private. Private. That word again. She bit her lip lightly, and for the first time Marco's eyes dipped, just for a second, to her mouth. Her breath nearly stopped. The elevator chimed, pulling both of them back into their bodies. They stepped out into a smaller executive floor, quiet, minimalist, with soft lighting and framed city photographs on the walls. Marco led her down a short hallway to a private conference room. It wasn't big. It wasn't intimidating. It felt safe. Sunlight streamed through wide windows, casting warm light across the polished table. Outside, Manhattan glowed beneath them. Marco closed the door behind them. Lauren stood near the table, fingers tightening around her notebook. Sit, he said gently. She did. He remained standing for a moment, watching her like he was choosing his words with care. Then he sat across from her, Not at the head of the table, not far away, directly in front of her, too close for her heart to behave. "I didn't bring you here to talk about schedules," he said. Her pulse stuttered. "Oh." He leaned forward, forearms on the table, voice low but steady. "You're quiet," he said. "Most people in this building are loud. They talk too much, try too hard, want too many things." She swallowed. "That's, common here?" "Yes," he said, "but not you." She couldn't hold his gaze for more than a second. It felt like looking directly into the sun. "I don't like drawing attention," she admitted. "That's not it." Her head lifted. "You don't draw attention," Marco said, "but you have presence." Presence. Her. The word felt unreal. He continued, "People underestimate you because you don't push yourself forward, but I've been watching." Her heart jolted. "Watching?" she echoed. "Yes," he said simply. "For a long time." Her breath stalled in her lungs. "You're organized, smart, calm under pressure. You know the right moment to speak and the right moment to be silent. You understand people. You read situations quickly, and you don't play games." She tried to speak, but her voice failed. "I can trust someone like that," he said. Her heart felt like it was expanding in her chest, too full, too fast. "But that's not the only reason I asked you to come here." Lauren's throat tightened. "It's not?" "No." He watched her carefully. "I asked you here because I wanted to see you without an audience." Her breath shook. The world outside the windows felt distant, blurry, irrelevant. Lauren's voice was barely audible. "Why?" Marco didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, studying her with that impossibly focused gaze. "As your boss," he said slowly, "I'm supposed to keep things professional." Lauren's heart dropped. Of course. Of course this was the part where he set boundaries. Of course this was the part where he reminded her that she was nothing more than another employee. She braced herself. "But," her eyes lifted instantly. "But," Marco repeated softly, "I'm finding that increasingly difficult around you." She froze. Completely. "I don't want to cross any lines," he continued. "I don't want you to feel pressured or uncomfortable. So I need to know something." He leaned forward again, closer now, voice low enough to melt her bones. "Do you feel nervous around me, Lauren?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap. I don't know," she whispered. He tilted his head. "Try." Her entire body buzzed with heat and adrenaline. She forced herself to breathe. "I feel," her voice cracked. "Aware." Marco's breath caught, just subtly. "Aware," he echoed. Lauren nodded. "You make me aware of everything." A slow, warm tension spread across Marco's expression, something like restraint mixed with desire. "And does that bother you?" he asked. She shook her head quickly. "No, it's just new." He exhaled quietly, something loosening in his shoulders. "I appreciate your honesty." Lauren swallowed again. "Can I ask something?" "Yes." "Why are you telling me this now?" He held her gaze for a long moment. Then he said the words that would flip her entire world upside down. "Because you deserve to know when someone sees you." She blinked. "Sees me?" "Yes." He leaned forward closer than ever. "I see you, Lauren." Her heart stopped. Started. Stopped again. "I see the way you hesitate before speaking. I see how you listen to every detail. I see how much you care. And I see how hard you try to hide it." She felt heat rise behind her eyes. Emotion she hadn't expected, hadn't invited. But he wasn't finished. "And I see the way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention." Her breath shattered. Oh God. He knew. He had known. Her hands trembled so much she pressed them against her notebook to steady them. Marco softened his voice. "I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying it because I don't want you doubting yourself." She swallowed hard. "People say I'm not your type." He tilted his head slightly. "People?" His jaw tightened. Or Blair? Lauren froze. He already knew. He had known all along. She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. His voice deepened. Lauren, don't ever let someone like Blair decide your worth. Her throat tightened. She said you'd never look at me. Marco leaned even closer, his voice a low rumble. And yet I can't seem to look away. The breath left Lauren's lungs completely. Before she could speak, before she could even think, a soft knock hit the door. They both looked up. Mr. Conti? A bodyguard called from outside. Your next appointment has arrived. Marco closed his eyes for a brief moment, like he hated being interrupted. Give me 1 minute, he said. Then he stood. Lauren stood too, instinctively. Marco looked down at her, the distance between them small enough for her to feel the warmth of his body. This conversation isn't over, he said. Her pulse throbbed in her throat. No, she whispered. It's not. He reached for the door, paused, looked back at her one last time, and the look in his eyes was unmistakable. Interest, tension, attraction, recognition. He opened the door slowly and stepped out into the hallway, switching back into business mode. Lauren stood alone in the quiet room, her body trembling with everything she had just felt, everything he had just admitted, everything this meant. Whatever happened next, it would change everything. But she wasn't ready for the storm waiting outside that door, because Blair had seen them enter the room, and Blair had no intention of letting this go. Lauren felt like electricity lived under her skin. The rest of the afternoon moved in pieces, blurred edges, scattered sounds, the world spinning too fast while she tried to act normal. Every time she blinked, she saw the moment he'd said it. I can't seem to look away. Those words replayed in her mind with dizzying sweetness. She returned to her desk trying to breathe, trying to focus, trying not to give Blair any hint of the storm inside her chest. But she didn't have to worry about Blair noticing, because Blair was already watching her like a hawk, every single move. Lauren tried to sit straight, organize files, check the shared calendar, but at 1:37 p.m., Blair walked right up to her desk and whispered sharply, "What did he tell you?" Lauren's heart dropped. "Blair, I don't want to—" "What did he tell you?" Blair demanded again, her voice quiet but sharp enough to cut. "Nothing," Lauren lied, clutching her pen too tightly. "Don't lie to me." Blair's smile stretched tight. "I saw the way he looked at you when you came out of that room." Lauren didn't respond. Blair leaned closer, eyes burning with jealousy. "Whatever you think is happening, it's not. Men like him don't end up with girls like you." Lauren's stomach twisted. But this time, the pain didn't land the same way. Not after the way Marco had looked at her. Not after the way he had spoken to her. Not after the way he had admitted he saw her. Lauren turned calmly back to her computer, and without looking at Blair, she said, "I don't want to discuss this." Blair froze. Lauren had never spoken to her like that. "Fine," Blair hissed. "Pretend you're special, but when he chooses someone else in the end, don't come crying to me." Lauren didn't answer. For the first time, Blair's words didn't dig deep enough to wound her, because she didn't believe them anymore. Not fully. Not after today. At 3:11 p.m., Marco walked out of his office with 3 associates behind him. He was deep in conversation, brows furrowed, voice firm. He didn't look around. He almost never did. But as he passed Lauren's desk, he glanced at her. Just once. Just long enough for her breath to catch. Just long enough to feel it in her ribs. And maybe she imagined it, but it looked like he softened for a second, before he turned back to business. Blair noticed. Blair definitely noticed. She stood 2 desks away, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Her eyes didn't leave Lauren for a single heartbeat. This wasn't going to end quietly. At 5:02 p.m., his people began packing up their things and the office settled into late afternoon calm. Lauren's desk phone rang. She checked the display. Marco Conti, office. Her heart leapt so sharply she almost knocked her pen off the desk. She answered, "Yes, Mr. Conti? Are you done with your tasks for the day?" "Yes, sir." "Good." His voice dropped slightly. "Come to my office." She stood immediately, smoothing her blouse, trying to calm her breathing. But before she could take a step, Blair cut in front of her. "Going somewhere?" Blair asked, smiling like she wanted to bite. Lauren held her notebook tighter. "He called me." Blair's eyebrows lifted slowly. "Again?" "Blair, I really don't—" "Don't what? Pretend?" Blair whispered sharply. "Pretend you're not excited? Pretend you're not hoping for something impossible?" Lauren stepped back. "I have to go," she said quietly. Blair laughed under her breath. "Good luck." "He probably needs you to fix a printer." Lauren ignored her and walked toward Marco's office. Her hands were shaking. She knocked. "Come in," he said. She entered. Marco stood near the window, one hand in his pocket, the city stretching in gold behind him. He wasn't wearing his jacket anymore. His shirt sleeves were rolled and the top button of his shirt was undone. He looked impossible. Masculine, confident, relaxed in a way that still felt controlled. Her heart thudded painfully. "You wanted to see me?" she asked softly. Marco turned to face her. "Yes." He nodded toward the chair across from his desk. "Sit." She did. He walked toward her slowly, not rushed, not formal, just aware of her, very aware. When he sat down, he didn't open a file. He didn't check his phone. He didn't look at a contract or a document. He looked at her, only her. "I didn't get to finish what I wanted to say earlier," he said. Lauren swallowed. "It's okay. I know you're busy." "I am," he said. "But that's not why I stopped." She blinked. "It's not?" "No." He paused. "I stopped because I didn't want to say something important in a hurry." Lauren's breath hitched. What were you going to say?" Marco leaned in slightly, his gaze unguarded, intense enough to stop her pulse. "I don't get distracted easily," he said. "But you—" He stopped. His jaw tightened like he was weighing the risk of saying the next part. "You distract me." Her breath caught in her throat. Every nerve lit up. "I do?" she whispered. "Yes." He didn't blink. "And I'm not used to that." She pressed her knees together under the table to keep them from shaking. "Marco." She swallowed again, her voice fragile, honest. "Why me?" He exhaled softly through his nose, a warm, low sound. "That's what I'm trying to understand," he admitted. "But today in that briefing room, I kept finding myself looking at you." Lauren felt heat rise up her neck. He continued, "You calm me. You ground me. And when you're near, I feel focused." Focused. That word hit her like lightning. "I thought you didn't notice me," she whispered. He leaned in closer. "I notice everything about you." Her stomach flipped. Every sound in the office hallway disappeared. The world narrowed to just the two of them. But then, a knock hit the door. Marco's eyes closed just once, like he was praying for patience. "What?" he called. A guard answered. "Mr. Conti, Blair is asking to speak with you." Lauren's heart dropped. Of course Blair chose this moment. Marco's expression changed, sharp, irritated, instantly done with interruptions. "No," he said. A simple, cold rejection. "Tell her I'm busy." The guard left. Marco waited until the footsteps faded. Then he turned his attention back to Lauren, voice lower now. "Where were we?" Lauren's voice failed her. Marco leaned just slightly closer, his eyes warm, certain. "Right," he murmured. "I was telling you how impossible it is for me to ignore you." She felt tears sting her eyes. Not sadness, overwhelm. He saw it. He softened immediately. "Hey," he said gently, voice shifting. "Don't cry." "I'm not," she whispered, blinking fast. "I'm just surprised." Marco reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull back. She didn't. He brushed one thumb along her wrist, barely a touch, barely a graze, but it sent her whole heartbeat into chaos. "You shouldn't be surprised," he said softly. "Not after today." Lauren breathed shakily. "It's just hard to believe." Marco's voice deepened. Believe it. Her whole body trembled. Then, his thumb paused against her skin, and he said something that made her heart completely stop. Have dinner with me tonight. Lauren stared at him, stunned. Dinner? She whispered. Yes, he said simply. Just the two of us. Her world tilted. Her pulse raced. She tried to speak, tried, but nothing came out. Marco smiled softly, knowingly. Lauren, he said, his voice velvet in certainty, this is not a misunderstanding. Her lips trembled. Are you asking me out? Yes. His gaze didn't leave hers. I am. Her heart burst in her chest. I want to, she whispered. Good. Marco's eyes warmed, slow and dangerous in the best way. I'll pick you up at 8. Before she could answer, the door slammed open. Blair stood there, breathless, angry, shocked. And she saw how close they were. She saw the warmth in Marco's eyes. She saw Lauren's flushed cheeks. She saw everything. Her voice broke in disbelief. What is going on here? Lauren froze. Marco didn't. He stood up slowly, turning toward Blair with sharp authority. But not before he said quietly to Lauren, Wait for me tonight. Her heart fluttered so hard she thought she might faint. Blair stood frozen in the doorway, chest heaving, eyes wide with disbelief, as if the world she'd built inside her head had just collapsed in one blow. Marco didn't flinch. He didn't step back. He didn't act guilty. He didn't pretend Lauren was just an employee. He simply turned toward Blair with a calm, controlled authority that made the temperature in the room drop. Blair, he said, voice low, you just walked into my office without permission. She stuttered. I knocked, and then entered anyway. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Lauren felt her heart pounding so hard she wondered if the whole office could hear it. Marco stepped closer to Blair, not aggressively, just enough to remind her who held power in this building. If you need something, you request it. You do not barge in. Blair's face flushed bright red. Marco, she whispered, desperate. I only came because I thought she was bothering you. Lauren blinked. Marco's jaw tightened. Lauren, he said sharply, does not bother me. Blair flinched. Marco's eyes narrowed. She is the one person I don't want interrupted. The air left Blair's lungs in a broken sound. Lauren sat perfectly still, notebook untouched in her lap, afraid to even breathe. Blair swallowed, stepping forward. I wasn't trying. I just don't understand why you're... Blair, Marco cut in, calm but merciless. You don't need to understand. Her hands shook. Her eyes shone with panic. Then her voice cracked. I don't get it. Why her? Why her? It was a blade disguised as a question. Lauren lowered her gaze, heat building behind her eyes. Marco turned slightly so he was facing them both. The tension fractured the air. Because, he said with quiet finality, I choose who I want. Blair gasped softly, like someone had punched the breath out of her. Lauren's heart dropped into her stomach. Marco continued, voice unshakable. And who I want is none of your concern. Blair stared at him, lips trembling. Anger, shock, humiliation, everything swirled behind her eyes. You're making a mistake, she whispered. No, Marco said. I'm not. Another blow. Blair's gaze snapped to Lauren, sharp, wounded, venomous. Lauren had never seen that expression on her. It wasn't just jealousy. It was betrayal. I thought we were friends, Blair said, voice rising. Lauren froze. Blair, I didn't do anything. You didn't do anything? Blair laughed. An ugly, broken sound. You stole the one thing I wanted. Marco stepped immediately between them. Don't raise your voice at her. Blair stared at him like she didn't recognize him. She's not even your type, she whispered. You said yourself, your world is dangerous. She's nothing like the women you date. Lauren's chest tightened painfully. Marco inhaled slowly, holding onto his patience by a thread. Leave my office, he said. Blair shook her head, tears threatening. Marco. Blair, he repeated, voice calm but final. That was not a request. She froze, breath shallow. Her gaze flicked between them, him standing tall and unbothered, Lauren sitting small and overwhelmed. Realization hit her in a wave. "You're going to regret this," she said softly to Lauren, not angry but devastated. "You have no idea what you're getting into." Marco took a step forward. "Enough." Blair finally turned away. She walked out slowly, shoulders tight, mascara threatening to run. The door closed behind her with a quiet click. Silence fell heavy in the room. Lauren felt her lungs squeeze. Marco exhaled, tired, rubbing his thumb along his brow before turning back to her. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said. Lauren shook her head. It's not your fault." "It is," he said. "I should have put boundaries in place earlier. Blair is ambitious, and that's fine. But what she did today crossed a line." He sat down again, but closer this time, closer than before Blair entered. Lauren swallowed hard. "She's hurt. She'll recover," Marco said simply. "But I won't let her take that out on you." Lauren's throat tightened. "I don't want trouble at work." "You won't have any." His voice was promise and certainty. "I'll make sure of that." She nodded slowly, trying to steady herself. But then, Marco's tone softened. "Are you okay?" Her eyes lifted, meeting his. That was all it took. Her breath shook, her voice cracked, her heart opened. "I didn't expect any of this," she whispered. He nodded once, slowly. "Neither did I." They looked at each other for a long moment, long enough for Lauren to feel her pulse in her fingertips. Then Marco stood again. "Come here." The words were gentle, not demanding, not overconfident, not boss to employee. Just Marco. She stood on unsteady legs and walked toward him. He reached out, hesitant, giving her time to pull back. She didn't. His hands rested lightly on her upper arms, warm, strong, careful. "You didn't deserve what she said to you," he murmured. "Not today. Not ever." Lauren swallowed. "It's okay." "No," he said, voice deeper. "It's not." His gaze softened, and just like earlier, like he couldn't help it, his thumb brushed her skin in a slow, grounding sweep. Her breath hitched. He lowered his voice further. "Tell me you're not doubting yourself again." She hesitated. He stepped closer, not touching, not pressing, just near enough for every inch of her to feel him. "Tell me." She exhaled. "I'm trying not to." His expression changed, something warm, almost relieved. "Good," he said, "because I won't tolerate anyone tearing you down, not even yourself." Her heart flipped. Then, Marco took a slow breath. "Now," he said, "about tonight." Her cheeks warmed instantly. "Dinner?" "Yes." He smiled faintly, eyes dipping to her lips for one dangerous second. "I meant what I said. I'm picking you up at 8. She nodded, shy but glowing. "Okay." "No, okay," he said softly. "Say yes." She bit her lip. "Yes." His jaw flexed, just slightly, just enough to show how much that one word affected him. He leaned in, closer than ever, his breath brushing her cheek. "Good," he whispered. Her pulse stuttered. He stepped back finally, letting her breathe again. "I'll walk you out," he said. But when he opened the office door, Lauren froze. The entire hallway was silent. Everyone was pretending to work. But every head was tilted. Every ear was listening. And Blair stood at her desk, arms crossed, eyes swollen but sharp. Lauren's breath clenched. Marco leaned close to her ear and whispered just for her, "Don't worry. Tonight. Nothing else matters." Her knees nearly gave out. He stepped back, straightened his shirt, and walked beside her past the whole office, past every curious stare, past every silent gasp. He didn't touch her. He didn't look at her. He didn't need to. The message was already clear. Marco Conti had chosen her. Blair's face hardened. She watched them walk away, jaw clenched so tightly it trembled. This wasn't over, and Lauren knew it. But for the first time, she didn't care, because tonight was theirs. Lauren spent the entire late afternoon floating somewhere between nerves and anticipation. She rode the subway home in silence, fingers trembling against the metal pole as she replayed Marco's voice over and over again in her mind. Have dinner with me tonight. I choose who I want, and who I want is none of your concern. By the time she reached her apartment, her heartbeat had become a steady echoing drum inside her chest. She rushed inside, dropped her purse on the counter, and paced for a moment, hands pressed to her cheeks, cheeks flushed. I'm going on a date with him. This is real. This is happening. She stepped in front of her small mirror, noticing she looked different, alive in a way she hadn't seen in years. She tried on 2 dresses, then 4, then the black one she kept for weddings and moments she never had. A soft, elegant black. Simple. Timeless. Her phone buzzed. 8 p.m. I'm outside. Her breath stopped. She grabbed her coat, steadied her shaking hands, and hurried downstairs. When she stepped out onto the sidewalk, she saw him. Marco leaned casually against a sleek black SUV parked along the curb. He wore a charcoal suit, dark shirt underneath, no tie. His sleeves were rolled. His hair was slightly messy from the drive. The glow of a street lamp outlined his jaw in gold. For the first time, he wasn't just her boss. He was a man waiting for her, and nothing had ever felt more unreal. Marco's eyes swept over her as she approached, slowly, almost reverently. A warmth sparked in his expression, subtle but unmistakable. You look beautiful, he said. Lauren flushed, swallowing hard. Thank you. He opened the car door for her, his hand brushing lightly against her back. Her body tightened with awareness. Everything about him felt amplified tonight. His presence, his scent, his voice, the warmth of his hand near her skin. He got in on the driver's side and pulled into the quiet traffic, headlights reflecting on his profile as the city blurred past them. Neither of them spoke for a moment. The silence was soft, comfortable, full of something unspoken. Finally, Marco glanced sideways at her. Nervous? Lauren exhaled. A little. He nodded once. Me too. She blinked, stunned. You? A faint smile curved the corner of his mouth. In my line of work, I don't get surprised often. You surprised me. Her heart fluttered painfully. Is that good? She whispered. He looked straight ahead again, voice calm, certain. It's very good. The car stopped in front of a discreet Italian restaurant tucked between 2 elegant buildings. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. It felt intimate. Warm lights, soft shadows, the kind of place where important conversations happened. Marco stepped out and opened her door again. Inside, the host bowed slightly. Mr. Conti, your private room is ready. Lauren blinked. Private room? Marco placed a gentle hand at the small of her back, guiding her toward a candle-lit corner behind glass partitions. There were only 2 chairs, a single candle, a view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. This is beautiful, Lauren breathed. Marco pulled her chair out for her. I wanted somewhere quiet, somewhere we wouldn't be interrupted. She sat slowly, her pulse loud in her ears. He settled across from her, eyes never leaving hers for long. The waiter arrived with water, menus, and wine. But Marco didn't touch his menu. He leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on the table. I didn't bring you here for dinner, he said softly. Lauren froze. His eyes warmed. I brought you here for honesty. Her lips parted. And the truth is, Marco continued, voice low and steady, I haven't stopped thinking about you for months. She felt her breath stutter. I saw you every day, he said, quiet, focused, kind. And you looked at me like you didn't expect anything in return. Her chest tightened painfully. But I noticed, he murmured. Every detail, every moment. Lauren swallowed hard. Then why didn't you? Because it wasn't appropriate, he said simply. I kept my distance. I tried to ignore it. His eyes darkened just a little. But today, in my office, I realized something. She leaned in unconsciously. What? That distance isn't protecting anything, he said. It's only keeping me away from you. Her breath caught. Marco exhaled softly. I'm not interested in games. I'm not interested in secrets. If I want something, I move toward it. Lauren's pulse hammered. And right now, his gaze dipped briefly to her lips. I want to move toward you. She felt her knees weaken under the table. Marco. Her voice broke, trembling with emotion. I'm afraid. Of me? He asked gently. No, she whispered. Of this. Of getting hurt. Marco reached out slowly, giving her time to pull back. She didn't. His fingers brushed the back of her hand. Warm, steady, real. I'm not going to hurt you, he said. Her eyes stung with unshed tears. And I'm not letting Blair or anyone else make you doubt yourself again. Lauren inhaled shakily. She's angry at me. She's angry at me, Marco corrected. Don't carry what isn't yours. Lauren's throat tightened. I don't want to cause trouble, she whispered. You're not, Marco said softly. You're the reason I breathe easier. Her heart broke open. The waiter returned briefly with bread and olive oil, but Marco dismissed him quickly. They didn't touch the food. They only looked at each other, softly, deeply. After a few moments, Lauren whispered, What happens now? Marco didn't hesitate. Now, he said, I show you how serious I am. He stood, walked around the table, stopped right in front of her. Lauren's breath stopped entirely. He reached out, slow, careful, and cupped her jaw with warm, gentle fingers. Tell me if you want me to stop, he murmured. She shook her head without thinking. Marco leaned in slowly, giving her time to breathe, to understand, to want it fully. And then he kissed her, softly, tenderly, certain, as if he'd been waiting for this moment far longer than she could ever imagine. Lauren's entire world tilted. Her fingers curled into his shirt. His thumb brushed her cheek. The city lights glowed behind them as if holding their breath. When the kiss finally broke, Marco rested his forehead against hers. This, he whispered, is only the beginning. Lauren exhaled shakily. I can't believe this is real. It's real, he said, and I'm not going anywhere. A tear slipped down her cheek, pure emotion, pure disbelief. Marco brushed it away with his thumb. You're mine now, Lauren, he said softly. Only if you want to be. Her voice came out in a trembling breath. I want to be. His eyes closed briefly, relief, warmth, happiness all washing over his features. Good, he murmured. He kissed her forehead gently, reverently. The softest promise in the world. Later that night he drove her home, walked her to her door, touched her hand one last time, and whispered, I'll see you tomorrow. But Lauren didn't know what tomorrow would bring, because Blair wasn't finished, and she had one last attempt left inside her. Lauren woke up the next morning feeling different. Not like someone who had simply gone on a date. Not like someone who had been kissed gently against the glow of the Manhattan skyline. Not like someone who had been walked to her door by the most powerful man she'd ever met. She woke up feeling chosen, warm, steady, seen. She touched her fingertips to her lips, remembering the way he held her face, the softness of his kiss, the certainty in his whisper. This is only the beginning. Her chest tightened with a happiness she almost didn't know how to hold. She dressed carefully, brushed her bangs twice, chose perfume she normally saved for special occasions, and took the subway with her heart floating in a soft golden bubble. But she wasn't naive. She knew Blair had seen everything. She knew the office wasn't going to be quiet today. She just didn't know how loud it would get. When she stepped off the elevator, conversations dimmed. People looked, subtle glances, curious eyes, murmurs that hushed quickly when she passed by. Lauren walked with calm steps and didn't stop at any desk until she reached her own. She sat, took a slow breath, and opened her email. 2 seconds later, Blair appeared, not strutting, not smiling, not pretending. She stood in front of Lauren's desk with arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes glassy as if she'd been awake all night replaying yesterday. "We need to talk," Blair said quietly. Lauren swallowed. "Blair, I don't want to fight with you." "This isn't a fight," Blair said. "It's a warning." Lauren's breath caught. "A warning?" Blair leaned closer. "Don't think last night changes anything." Lauren blinked. "Blair, you're not meant for him," Blair said sharply, but her voice cracked, betraying the fragility underneath. "You don't understand his world. You'll get hurt. I'm trying to help you." Lauren's stomach twisted, not because Blair was right, but because she truly believed she was. "I appreciate your concern," Lauren said softly, "but it's not your decision." Blair's eyes stung. It was jealousy. It was heartbreak. It was disbelief. "You're throwing yourself into something you can't handle," Blair whispered. "He'll choose someone else. Or something will happen. Or, a deep voice echoed behind them. "You should let Lauren speak for herself." Both women froze. Lauren turned slowly. Marco Conti stood just a few steps away. His presence filled the entire hallway, and he had heard everything. Blair stiffened immediately. "Marco, I didn't mean, I just—" Marco held up one hand. "Enough." Blair's breath faltered. The entire office went silent, eyes pretending not to glance, but absolutely watching every second. Marco stepped forward, slow, calm, devastating in his control. "You're projecting your fears onto someone who didn't ask for them," he said. Blair's knees almost buckled. "I was only trying to—" "You were trying to control something that isn't yours," Marco said. Blair's lip trembled. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." His voice softened. Not cruel, not angry, just firm. "You're a good employee. You do your job well. But anything outside of that," he shook his head slightly, "is not your place." Blair's shoulders tensed. She looked at Lauren with hurt, real, raw hurt, and then back at Marco. "So that's it?" she whispered. "You pick her." The words punched the air. Marco didn't hesitate. "Yes." A soft gasp rippled across the office. Lauren froze in place, breath lost somewhere between her lungs and her heart. Marco continued, voice steady. "Who I'm with is my choice, and I've made it." Blair stared at him, broken, embarrassed, overwhelmed. "I can't stay here," she whispered, voice barely audible. "Blair," Marco said, gentler this time. "Take the morning off. Clear your head. We'll talk about your role later. I don't want to lose you as an employee, but boundaries are necessary." Blair swallowed hard, nodded without speaking, grabbed her purse, and left without looking back. The elevator doors closed behind her. Silence followed. A silence thick with shock, curiosity, confusion, admiration, jealousy. Lauren felt her hands shaking on the keyboard. Then, Marco turned to her. Everything else faded. "You okay?" he asked softly, meant only for her. She nodded once. "I think so." He lifted a hand, to touch her, to comfort her, but stopped himself, remembering the eyes around them. Instead, he said quietly, "My office, 10 minutes," and walked away. Exactly 10 minutes later, Lauren knocked on his door. "Come in," he said. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Marco stood near the window, hands in his pockets, the city sprawling below him in early sunlight. "Sit," he said gently. She sat. He didn't speak for a moment. He just looked at her, like she was something precious, fragile, important. Finally, he exhaled. "I didn't want that to happen in public," he said, "but I won't let anyone make you doubt yourself." Lauren swallowed tightly. "I didn't want to cause problems." "You didn't," he said firmly. "Blair's reaction wasn't about you. It was about her not accepting something that was never promised to her." Lauren lowered her gaze. She said, "You're not my world, and I'm not yours." Marco stepped closer. Slow, grounded, certain. He knelt beside her chair, taking her hands gently into his. "Then she's wrong," he said quietly. Lauren's breath caught. "Because you are part of my world now," he whispered. "Only if you want to be." Tears filled her eyes, not sadness, but the overwhelming kind of happiness that made it hard to breathe. "I want to be," she whispered. Marco smiled softly. "Good." He stood, helping her stand too. Their bodies were close, dangerously close, but safe. Natural. Perfect. "Tonight," Marco said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, "we'll have dinner again, somewhere quiet, somewhere comfortable, and I want you to tell me everything you're afraid of, everything that makes you hesitate, everything you want." Lauren's heart pounded. "Why?" "Because," he whispered against her temple, "I want to take care of you. Not just the parts you show me, all of you." She closed her eyes. His hand moved to the small of her back, warm and reassuring. "And tomorrow," he continued, "we set boundaries in this office, clear ones, so no one, including Blair, tries to interfere again." Lauren nodded. "Okay." But Marco wasn't finished. He lifted her chin gently with one finger. "And starting today," his voice lowered, soft and certain, "you don't walk behind me anymore." Her breath stilled. "What do you mean?" He smiled in that quiet, warm way that melted her every time. "You walk next to me." Her heart broke open. Completely. Then Marco leaned down, slow, careful, asking for permission with his eyes, and she nodded before she even realized she had. He kissed her, soft, warm, sure, a promise, a beginning, a choice. When the kiss broke, he rested his forehead on hers. "You were never invisible to me, Lauren." She shook with emotion. "I can't believe this." "Believe it," he whispered, "because I'm not going anywhere." Blair took a few days off. Everyone noticed. Everyone whispered. No one dared ask Marco. Lauren kept working like always, quiet, efficient, sweet. But things weren't the same. Marco made sure of it. He'd pause at her desk to check in on her. He'd ask if she'd eaten. He'd send her small smiles no one else caught. He'd protect her from rude clients with a single look. And every night, he picked her up, held her hand, walked her home, kissed her goodnight slowly, sweetly, with care, never rushing, never pushing, just choosing her, over and over. On Friday afternoon, Marco stepped out of a meeting and walked straight to Lauren's desk. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, cheeks warm. "For what?" "For the weekend." Her eyes widened. "We're spending it together?" Marco smiled softly. "Unless you want to spend it with someone else." She shook her head. No hesitation. "I want to be with you." He offered her his hand. Not in secret. Not in shadows. Not hidden. She took it. The office watched in stunned silence as they walked side by side toward the elevator. Blair returned that same afternoon. She saw the way he held Lauren's hand. She saw the way their shoulders brushed. She saw the way he looked at her. Soft, warm, protective. And for the first time, she understood. He had chosen Lauren. And nothing would change that. The elevator doors closed behind them. Lauren leaned into Marco's side as he kissed the top of her head. And with the entire city stretched ahead of them, their story finally began for real. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.